There comes a moment, not in noise, but in silence, when the dust has settled, the masks have fallen, and the voices that once swore they'd never leave are nowhere to be found. You look around, not in anger, but in clarity. You see it now, what you gave, what they took, and how little they thought of it. But listen closely. This is not the hour for vengeance. This is not the time for tears. This is the coronation of your character. Because their betrayal will follow them, and your loyalty will follow you. Let them deal with the weight of their choices. Let their betrayal be their curse. And you, wear your loyalty like a crown, even if no one sees it, even if no one applauds it, because you will know, and that is enough. The weight of loyalty in a world of masks. Loyalty today is not just rare, it is nearly incomprehensible to those who have never carried it with weight. In a world addicted to instant gratification, fleeting validation, and shallow connection, loyalty becomes something almost mythical. It is not fashionable, it is not loud, and it is certainly not convenient. Loyalty requires a certain kind of soul, one that chooses to stand still while others flee, to speak truth while others flatter, and to remain anchored while the winds of self-interest howl in every direction. Most people are not disloyal because they're inherently cruel. They're disloyal because loyalty demands something they're not prepared to give: consistency, sacrifice, integrity. It requires remembering someone else's pain, even when your own life is comfortable. It asks you to hold your ground when no one's watching, and when there's no reward for doing so. And so what you find instead are people who wear affection like a costume, beautiful on the outside, but hollow on the inside. Their words are sweet, their timing perfect, but their hearts are elsewhere, always calculating, always preparing to leave the moment commitment becomes uncomfortable. And that's where the weight comes in. Loyalty is not a trait, it is a burden, a chosen burden. It hurts sometimes. It keeps you up at night wondering if you're being too forgiving, too patient, too hopeful. It asks you to carry people who would never lift you in return, but you still do it. Not because you are naive, but because you understand something deeper. You understand that loyalty is not about the other person. It's about who you are. You give your word and you keep it, even if they don't deserve it. You stay the course because you made a promise, not because it's easy or even fair. That's what separates the loyal from the common. It's not the absence of betrayal that defines a loyal heart, but how it continues to remain true in a world that keeps pulling it apart. People will often mistake your loyalty for weakness because they cannot comprehend the strength it takes to keep choosing love when bitterness would be easier. They will think you're too soft, too trusting, too devoted. Let them think what they will. They don't understand that what you carry is not fragility, it's principle. You could betray, you could walk away, you could play the same cold game, but you choose not to. That is your strength. So, in this world of masks, where people perform affection and vanish when the curtain falls, you remain the rarest of all presences, the one who meant what they said. And even if the world doesn't see it, even if they never thank you for it, understand this: your loyalty is a crown. It may be invisible to most, but it shines in the dark. It gleams in silence. And someday, when all the masks have crumbled, it will be the only thing left standing with dignity intact. Betrayal says more about them than you. When someone betrays you, the first instinct is to look inward. You search your memories for the moment you might have deserved it. You revisit every conversation, every favor, every time you chose to show up instead of walk away. And in doing so, you quietly ask yourself, was I too much, too trusting, too blind? But that question is a wound disguised as reflection. Because the truth is, betrayal is not a mirror. It's a confession, not yours, but theirs. Betrayal reveals far more about the betrayer than the betrayed. It exposes their limits, not your faults. It uncovers the places in them where integrity should have lived but didn't. It speaks of the fear they could never face, the greed they could never tame, or the weakness they could never conquer. Your loyalty did not cause their disloyalty. Your goodness didn't trigger their cruelty. Your belief in them didn't make them lie. They did what they did because that's who they chose to be when they thought they wouldn't be held accountable. And that's the cruel paradox. You were real, they were not. You were whole in your intention, they were fragmented in theirs. So when the break came, you carried the pain of their choices, while they walked away, pretending they had none to answer for. But that's the illusion. They always answer. Maybe not to you, maybe not now, but to themselves, in every quiet moment, every restless night, every hollow smile. Because betrayal may buy freedom, but it also sells peace. One of the most devastating lies betrayal tells is that your love was wasted, that all the moments you stood by them, defended them, forgave them, that all of it was meaningless. But that too is untrue. Loyalty is never wasted, not because they deserved it, but because it was the truest reflection of you. You stayed loyal because that's who you are, not because they earned it. The value of your character is not diminished by their inability to match it. In fact, your unwavering loyalty in the face of their deception only sharpens the contrast between you. You may never get an apology. You may never hear the words that would bring justice to your heart. But betrayal has a strange way of aging poorly. What felt like victory to them will, in time, feel like a ghost. Because trust, once broken, leaves behind an echo. And every time they try to build something real again, that echo will remind them of what they shattered. People forget that loyalty doesn't just hold relationships together, it haunts those who broke it. They remember the ones they betrayed, not always out of guilt, but because, somewhere deep inside, they know they will not be trusted that way again. So stop carrying the shame of their choices. Stop thinking that your heart was the mistake. You loved purely, you stayed loyally, and you showed up when others would have disappeared. That is something to be proud of. Let their betrayal rot on their side of the story. Let it live as the quiet price of their performance. You, on the other hand, are not marked by their failure. You're marked by your strength, by your consistency, by your refusal to turn cold. Their betrayal is their curse, but your loyalty, it remains your crown. Walk away without the need to destroy. There's a particular kind of strength the world rarely talks about. The strength it takes to walk away, without the urge to break what broke you. To carry the weight of betrayal and yet choose not to retaliate, not to return cruelty with cruelty. That kind of silence, that kind of restraint, is not weakness. It is discipline. It is dignity. It is knowing that the highest form of power is not in destruction, it's in detachment. When someone betrays you, the natural instinct is to prove a point, to expose them, to let the world see what they did behind the curtain. You feel the fire rise in your chest, the need to shout, to correct the narrative, to take back what they stole. Not just your trust, but your reputation, your peace, your version of the story. But here's the truth. If you have to burn everything down to feel powerful, then you're still giving them control. And haven't they already taken enough? Walking away is not about pretending you weren't hurt. It's about choosing not to let the hurt redefine you. It's about understanding that you cannot heal by becoming like the ones who wounded you. You don't need to crush them to rise. You don't need to curse them to be free. You don't need the world to turn against them for your heart to find peace. True power is in knowing what you're capable of and choosing not to use it when it serves no purpose but pride. There is a quiet revenge in peace, a silent retribution in your refusal to play the same game. When you walk away without bitterness, you rob them of the drama they expected. When you choose silence over spectacle, you deny them the satisfaction of your pain. And when you continue forward with grace, unshaken, unbothered, and untethered, you rise above the very story they tried to trap you in. Some will call it cowardice, this act of letting go without a fight. Let them. Let them misunderstand your silence. Let them interpret your composure as defeat. The people who need noise to feel strong will never understand the power of peace. What they won't see is the war you've already won. The one inside. The one where you chose healing over hatred, clarity over chaos, and growth over grudges. And the truth is, time does its own unraveling. Those who betray often betray again, not because they're evil, but because they haven't faced themselves. And eventually the very patterns they once used to hurt you will turn inward. What was once a game becomes a trap. What was once control becomes isolation. They don't need your help to fall. The seeds were already sown. All you have to do is not follow them into the fire. So walk away, not because you're giving up, but because you're reclaiming your space. You are no longer in the business of fixing people who broke you. You are not responsible for explaining the consequences of their choices. And you are not required to hold their hand through the pain they caused. Let them sit with what they did. Let them live in the house they built with lies. And you? Walk forward, quietly, strongly, with a stillness that speaks louder than revenge ever could. That's where real power lives, not in destruction but in discipline, not in fury but in freedom. Because when you walk away and refuse to destroy, you remind the world, and yourself, that you are already crowned. Loyalty is a crown only the brave can wear. There is a kind of nobility that exists far beneath the surface of everyday life. It doesn't shine in the spotlight. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't speak loudly of its virtues. Instead, it lives quietly in the hearts of those who choose loyalty, not because it benefits them, but because it defines them. These people are rare, almost unseen in a world that prizes image over integrity, speed over sincerity, and personal gain over collective good. But make no mistake, when you meet one, you feel it. You feel the weight they carry. You feel the stillness in their presence. And above all, you feel their strength. Loyalty is not a trend, it is not a tactic, it is not something you put on when it suits you and take off when it becomes heavy. Loyalty is a decision made in the soul and carried through action, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's painful, and even when no one else would blame you for walking away. It is the silent promise you make to stand by someone not just in celebration, but in their collapse. It's the decision to guard someone's name when they're not in the room, to protect their vulnerability, to honor their trust, even after they've forgotten what you've done for them. But here's the truth few are willing to admit. Loyalty will not always be returned. In fact, it often won't be. You may give everything, only to receive silence. You may fight for someone only to find they left the battlefield long before you noticed. You may protect them in private while they entertain your enemies in public. And in those moments, something in you will begin to question, what is the point of being loyal when the world spins on betrayal? The answer is simple, but it is not easy. You remain loyal not because the world deserves it, but because you do. You are not defined by how others treat you. You are defined by what you continue to give, even when the world forgets to give it back. Loyalty is not a currency to be traded. It is a crown worn by those who have made peace with the cost. And yes, there is a cost. You will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will be taken for granted. And worst of all, you will often be left standing alone. But what others call weakness is actually the foundation of everything strong. The world is filled with people who know how to leave, who know how to give up, who know how to take what they want and disappear. That's easy. That takes nothing. What's hard, what's rare, is to keep choosing the high road when the low one is more tempting. What's powerful is to know the dirt someone has on you and still protect their dignity. To carry the knife they used against you and never use it back. To remember someone's humanity, even when they've forgotten yours. Loyalty is often lonely, but it is never in vain. Because while the world may not reward it instantly, life has a way of circling back. People come and go, circumstances shift. But character has memory, and the soul remembers who it became in moments of choice. Years from now, when the dust has long settled and the names have faded, what you'll be left with is not how many times you were betrayed, but how many times you refused to betray yourself. You see, loyalty is not really about others. It's about you, about the kind of life you want to build, the kind of legacy you want to leave, and the kind of person you want to meet in the mirror each morning. There's a peace that comes from knowing you were true, even if they weren't. That you gave what you promised, even when they didn't. That you stood firm, even when it would have been easier to run. That kind of peace can't be bought. It can't be faked, and it can't be taken away by anyone who walks out. That's what makes it a crown. Not because it sparkles, but because it lasts. Crowns are not for decoration, they are for bearing weight. And loyalty is no different. It weighs heavy on the soul. It forces you to question your own limits. It teaches you patience, humility, and restraint. It stretches your heart in painful ways. But in the process, it reveals what you're truly made of. Not all crowns are visible. Some sit quietly on the heads of those who choose principle over popularity, who choose to keep their word, even in private, who would rather walk alone in truth than join the crowd in deception. In this age of shallow bonds and digital masks, being loyal has become almost revolutionary. People leave for less. They ghost, they fade, they disappear. They chase validation instead of value. They abandon instead of repair. And in that whirlwind of temporary connections, loyalty becomes your rebellion, your mark, your identity. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's right. So when you feel the ache of being the one who stayed true while others wandered, when your kindness is dismissed as weakness and your loyalty is mistaken for foolishness, remember this: the crown you wear cannot be seen by those who have never earned one of their own. They will mock what they do not understand. They will misinterpret what they've never lived. Let them, because the real weight of a crown is not measured in gold, but in the moments you chose to rise above, to stay the course, to live by your values when no one else was watching. That is not weakness. That is not naivety. That is royalty of the soul. So wear it, not with arrogance, not with expectation, but with quiet pride. With the knowledge that you are not common, that you are not easily swayed, that you are not made of fragments, but of foundation. Because loyalty, when lived fully, becomes more than a virtue. It becomes your crown, and no betrayal, no loss, no silence can ever take it from you. The rise of the loyal heart. There comes a time, after the betrayal, after the silence, after the heartbreak, when something in you begins to stir. Not rage, not revenge, something deeper, something steadier. It is not loud, it does not make speeches, it does not demand to be seen, but it is there, rising slowly from the ashes of all that was taken from you. It is the loyal heart, finally realizing it was never broken, only bruised, and now it remembers what it is. Because loyalty does not die in the face of betrayal, it only grows quiet. It goes inward, it retreats into the soul like a lion licking its wounds. Not defeated, but patient. And when it rises again, it rises with a new kind of strength. Not the strength that seeks to prove or punish, but the strength that simply knows. It knows who it is. It knows what it gave. It knows what it withstood. In this final chapter, you do not return to the battlefield to fight the same war. You return to rise above it, to build something stronger from the ruin, to stop surviving and start living, not with a guarded heart, but with a wiser one. Because here's the truth: betrayal may have shifted your path, but it did not end your journey. In fact, it refined it. It cut away what was false. It revealed what was real. And now you see clearly not just who others are, but who you are. You are not the victim. You are the vessel. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt with better materials, stronger ones, truer ones. The loyal heart is not naive. It does not pretend the pain didn't happen. It does not erase the memory. It remembers everything, but it refuses to become bitter. It carries the lesson without carrying the hate. It learns, but it does not harden. That is what makes it so powerful. It knows what betrayal feels like and still chooses to remain soft. It knows what abandonment feels like and still chooses to show up. It knows what silence feels like and still chooses to speak gently. That kind of heart doesn't just survive, it rises. And when it does, it doesn't look for applause. It doesn't need an audience. It is not driven by recognition. It is content in the quiet, in the knowing, in the deep, unshakable awareness that it stayed true to itself when everything else was false. Some people spend their lives building walls after betrayal, but not you. You build doors. You don't shut yourself off from the world. You let the pain teach you how to open differently, how to see more clearly, how to give more wisely. That is the rise of the loyal heart. It doesn't erase what happened, it transcends it. You begin to love again, but this time from fullness, not from fear. You begin to trust again, not because others earned it, but because you refuse to live in the prison of suspicion. You begin to give again, not because you forget the past, but because you know your strength is not in withholding, but in discerning where your gift belongs. And slowly, your heart becomes not just a place of healing, but a source of healing for others. Because people recognize something in you. They feel safe. They sense the stillness, the steadiness, the storm you've already walked through, and they listen, not just to your words, but to your silence. They trust not just your kindness, but your character. That is what the loyal heart creates when it rises. Not noise, but depth. Not drama, but dignity. Not retaliation, but redemption. And one day, perhaps when you least expect it, someone will show up. Not to fix you, not to rescue you, but to stand beside you. Not because you chased them, but because you became the kind of presence people are drawn to. Not flashy, not forceful, but true. And they will stay, not because they need you, but because they honor you. And in that quiet connection, you will finally see the reward of all those years you stayed loyal when it felt foolish. You will see that your loyalty was not your downfall, it was your preparation. Preparation for something deeper, truer, lasting. Because the rise of the loyal heart isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. You will walk into rooms with peace. You will make decisions without doubt. You will stop explaining your worth. You will stop justifying your past. You will simply live, not in reaction to betrayal, but in alignment with your truth. And everything that once hurt you becomes fuel. Every time you were overlooked becomes fire. Every time they left you behind becomes wind at your back. This is your moment, not to seek justice, but to live with justice in your bones. Not to beg for closure, but to walk with clarity. Not to chase crowns, but to wear yours, quietly. Because your loyalty was never wasted. It made you, it shaped you, and now it crowns you. Let their betrayal be their curse. Let your loyalty be your legacy. And when you rise, don't just rise in power, rise in peace.